welcome. Perhaps you've opened a box of Cracker Jacks hoping to find a wonderful prize. However, what you have found is a prize even more valuable, a continuing episode of our conversation with Fatima, our dear friend who's a medical resident in New York City, connecting with her psychiatric residency. In our practice, Namaste Holistic Counseling, I know that, particularly for the last year, Fatma, I've been seeing patients every day, uh, usually on the weekends only until noon. However, uh, what type of uh, what type of ailments, what type of problems have you been seeing mainly from people, especially during this last year?
So since I'm doing more outpatient, we see a lot of like depression, anxiety, panic disorder, adjustment disorder. We do also obviously, since it's a clinic in a hospital that has its own inpatient units. We also see a lot of patients with schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar disorder who had recent admissions to the hospital. But I would say that we've definitely seen um, an increasing number of people with anxiety, particularly during the pandemic. Um,
I'm running into many patients who just seem to be languishing. They are restless, irritable, discontent, and they can't put a finger on it or find out what's driving that behavior. Do you do you have occasion to encounter that?
yeah, but I think obviously our clinic is a little more intense in a way, so not a lot of people, so we get like quite acutely sick patients.
Okay. Well, great. I always enjoyed doing that type of work actually. Have there been any breakthroughs in medication as far as treating people with schizophrenia and or uh, schizoaffective disorder?
Yeah. I mean, because of the volume of patients that we see, and we do see some of the sickest patients. We have to use a lot of medications, or we have to kind of like figure out ways to help people become part of the community again. So yeah, I think we get quite a lot of exposure into medications, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, antidepressants.
I'm a firm believer in that talk therapy, the type of mindfulness based efforts that I do, also they enhance and make the medication work better. However, I do run into some people sometime who just want to get better on their own, and I attempt to tell them that could you just give medication a chance?
Yeah, and I think that was something that I kind of like struggled with a lot when I started my third year, because the first 2 years of residency we do mostly inpatient or emergency room. So obviously patients are not stable enough that they can function in the community, so they need to be in the hospital. But in the third year, since we do mostly outpatient, these are stable patients, and I think one of the things that I struggled with quite a lot was just to kind of like you know understand that I can be a good doctor and make recommendations, but at the end of the day, the patient has autonomy and they're the ones who are going to decide what to do. And I think one of the things that some I had a hard time kind of like grasping was that I can't be making more of an effort that my patient is. So I think that was something that I needed to learn.
Well, one of the things that we always learn is that if we're working harder at a situation than the patient is, then our efforts are not going well. I
Mhm.
usually tell people that I'll do my part, however, I expect you to do yours.
Yeah, for sure.
So, there's been recently I've connected with psychiatrists that do ketamine infusions and also the TMS type of therapy, the transcranial magnetic stimulation. I don't know how your experience has been, but I've seen ketamine make some incredible improvements in people with drug resistant depression.
So definitely, we in our hospital we have electroconvulsive therapy. We are trying to get, TMS approval, but all of that takes a while. I haven't had a chance to work with ketamine, but it is something that we definitely talk about. We have regular journal clubs, case conferences where we, review the latest literature. So we definitely talk a lot about intranasal ketamine and how, because sometimes we have tried a lot of SSRIs, or we've tried a lot of, there have been patients who've had like good 8-10 sessions of ECT, and they don't see a lot of difference. So it is something that we talk about, but we don't always have the resources, and sometimes our patients don't have the resources, because I do work in like a in a in a city hospital. So a lot of our patients are uninsured, undocumented, or just don't have, unfortunately, a lot of resources.
Well, that's definitely a story for another whole podcast, as that's one of my issues with the world today is when people, uh, through no fault of their own, lose their medical coverage and or don't have it to begin with. However, one of the things that Dr. Chaudhry always said was, if somebody has the honesty, open mindedness, and willingness to try, then financial considerations should not stand in the way of their wellness.
Hmm.
And I don't know how uh, that plays out in your hospital. They still have to pay the electric bills and pay their staff.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the good things about working in a city hospital is that we don't, um, and I try to reiterate that to my patients, that not having insurance is not a hindrance to seeking treatment. We do have measures in place if somebody lost their job or lost coverage, or lost, because of the pandemic, have lost like the primary breadwinner of the family. We do have a financial counseling department where they can go show them, how they don't have a job, or if it's maybe a family of 10 that's being provided for by one person. So they can actually get a fee scale, and the lowest of fee scales, like the is that basically you get every appointment free. And for medication you have to pay like $2 for medication. Like our hospital pharmacy would dispense that medication for them that's being prescribed, but obviously a lot of like the newer medications are not available in that case, like medications that require like prior authorizations, or that are very very expensive, that are not being stocked by our pharmacy. But I still think, just having, just having the ability to see a psychiatrist or a doctor for free is a very very big thing.
Then you're providing a wonderful service. And actually, I'm a real firm believer in the 12 step world, as you know. And there's a responsibility pledge in 12 step recovery that says, when anyone anywhere reaches out their hand for help, I want the hand, in this case, of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible. How does this take, if any, does this take a toll on you emotionally? How do you wash some of these things off at the end of the day?
there are days that are harder than other days. I have been in therapy myself for the past 2 years at this point,
Okay.
which I think has definitely, helped me a lot to kind of like, maintain boundaries, to try and leave work when I leave work. And then in just general, let, to not carry the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Right. So, one of the things that, and again, I refer to the 12 step world frequently, even with my patients, is that uh, we can't allow other people's problems to become our own, or then uh, we'll become useless.
Hmm.
So, I often talk to people about the difference between being worried and being concerned. Worry can consume you. Worry can be debilitating, which prevents you from acting. However, and again, we're talking about this mindset type of a deal where we have concern, which means that we are aware of the issue, which means we can act upon it. Uh, one of the one of the tattoos that I got was, I don't know if you can see it, but it says abracadabra. When you think of the word abracadabra, Fatma, what comes to your mind?
Well, I am a big Harry Potter fan, so my when I think about abracadabra, I think of Avada Kedavra, which is like a death spell in Harry Potter.
Okay. Well, mainly in abracadabra, it's used by magicians, mainly in the United States, when they want to make something appear. They say abracadabra.
Hmm.
However, it's a real word and it comes from the Bible's Jesus time and it's Aramaic. And what it translates into, I speak what I create what I speak. So
Hmm.
90% of cognitive behavioral therapy is about changing the language in the way one speaks to oneself. However, I often caution people that therapy can be frustrating and it can be time consuming and the rewards can be incremental. How do you pass that knowledge on and try to ask people to be patient?
I think it's definitely a big struggle because I think patients sometimes feel like, medications are kind of like magical wands that I will just swish and flick and their depression or anxiety is going to go away, or that, one therapy session is going to fix everything. Um, one of the um, one of my attendings uses this particular example, and I don't think that I will be as, I will be able to explain it as well as he does. But what he kind of says is that, you think of your depression or your anxiety or whatever that you're going through, you think of it as, being on like a boat, um with and in water that is, waves are crashing, and it's like the tide is high and you feel like, you might drown. um and the medication and therapy is kind of like an oar, so it will help you, but at the end of the day you're the one who has to actually, work on it yourself.
So, one of my favorite, absolute favorite memories uh, with you was when we met those young people in Highland Park and
Mhm.
you sat down
Mhm.
with them. And then we came back down to my office on North Highland Avenue and we did the prayers.
Mhm. For
Absolutely,
sure.
absolutely one of my favorite times with you.
Mhm.
So, have
Mhm.
you been able to continue practicing your faith here?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that I also love about New York. I think it's a very diverse place, and I see a lot of people, with similar skin color, or who are from Pakistan or the subcontinent. You have mosques here. It was just Ramadan. Ramadan
Yes.
ended last week, so it was a very spiritually effective month for a lot of us here.
So, how did the pandemic affect you personally? Not professionally, personally.
I think the biggest thing was my inability to go home. I was supposed to go to Pakistan to visit my mom in June of 2020, and then earlier this year I wanted to go, but I was not able to. And I think a lot of us international graduates who come far away from home, we try not to let it affect us, but a lot of our irritability, or just in general how we um, live our lives, is definitely affected by the subconscious, because we miss home, we miss our families, we miss our parents more than anything else. And I think the other thing was also just I our lives of healthcare workers didn't really change, in the sense that we were still going into work, we were coming back home. I kind of consider myself lucky because I live on my own, so I didn't have to feel like I was bringing home something, and that some like one of my loved ones would get sick. If I was bringing, if I were to carry the virus with me from work. um, but just the idea of, like, things that you could do, things that we took for granted, like hanging out with friends or going to the park and stuff like that. I think, especially when the pandemic had just started, or when we had the first wave last year, I think it really took away means of us being able to decompress.
One of the Although I don't have a prescription pad, one of the prescriptions that I generally try to write every day is one for hope. Uh, t-
Hmm.
tell me about Tell me about the hope that you attempt to instill in people, Fatma.
So there is actually a verse in the Holy Quran which transliterates to, verily with every difficulty there is ease. So I basically just say that every night has a dawn, every night will end. So this might seem like a very long night, it might seem like a never ending night, but it will end and you will see light.
Yes. So the Buddha has a saying, roughly the same thing. He says, when you feel despair, know that no matter how dark the night, morning comes. No matter
Hmm.
how cold the winter, spring comes. When you feel despair, know that the wheel is turning, joy will come. And I particularly remember one time when I was feeling particularly despondent, and I usually don't get that way. I think, I'm a pretty upbeat type of person. Uh, I am a Quaker, I'm a liberal Quaker, and I felt that I needed to connect with somebody. So the meeting house where we meet is down in Pittsburgh, and I was in Delmont, a little far away. So I attended the mosque many times in Monroeville with Dr. Chaudhry, and I decided to go there. So I went in there, and I was despondent, and I was just sitting there, and some older gentleman came up to me, and he says, "You look troubled, brother." And I said, "Yes, yes, I am." And he said, "Lay your burdens with Allah. He is merciful." And that meant a lot to me that day, very much so, very, very much so. And I always appreciated your attention to your faith, as with holistic wellness. I make no apologies for suggesting and often insisting that there has to be some type of spiritual connection to bind and make whole the body the body and the mind. How what type of is that a type of practice where in the city hospital where you're at?
Not really. Um, But one thing that I was surprised when I was, when I just started was that they do, when we do have new admissions, we do have we do ask them whether there is any sort of spiritual care that they require, or if there is anything that they need in terms of, practicing their faith, or if there's anything that we can do. A lot of people don't really feel comfortable answering that question,
Ah,
or
okay.
don't feel like there's anything that they want to add.
Hmm.
But there are people for whom, their faith matters a lot, and they tell us if they're practicing Muslims, they would want like a prayer mat, or they want the Bible, they want the pastor to come visit them. So I was pleasantly surprised that, and it's something that we do for every patient. Now, whether they choose to utilize that, or it's something that's not important to them, that depends on the patients. But it's something that definitely we try to include.
So you present opportunities.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, that's what I try to help people understand. They can view things as an obstacle or they can view them as an opportunity. It depends on which perspective they want to look at. Which end of the horse do you want to look at? The horse has two ends. You can look at the front end or you can look at the rear end. I suggest the front end myself. However, Dr. Chaudhry always referred to depression as learning days. Uh, Always something that we can learn from that moment, uh, which is so much I appreciated about him. So, if there's any message that you would like to uh, send out to particularly young ladies who may be listening to this podcast and say, wow, wow, I wish I could be like Fatma. Wow, I could wish I could be in her position. What would you have to say to them?
Um, I would just say have faith in yourself. You can do anything that you put your mind to. You just need to have faith in yourself and take the first step.
Taking the first step. Sometimes we call that failure to launch, and taking that first step often requires courage. So, tell us about the courage that you had to leave Pakistan to come to the United States, to a foreign country, and get involved in medical education.
Um, Sometimes I think maybe it was just naivety. Like I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Sometimes I think it was just blind faith that God will make it easy for me and will figure out a way. Because I remember when I was preparing for the steps, there were days when, I would feel really down or hopeless. Then I would cry and I would, complain to my parents. And both my mom and my dad used to say to me that don't pray that, that God grants you success in the USMLE journey. Just pray that if this is for your betterment, if this is for a good future, if this is where you are meant to succeed, then He will open the path for you. So I think I maybe it just came from there that if this is working out for me, it is because God has blessed this journey for me.
That sounds like the 11th step in 12-step recovery, Fatma, where it says, we seek through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So I believe there's a much correlation between the steps of 12-step recovery and your faith. It sounds like there's much. Quite often, Fatma, what I'll give people is the 10 profound Sufi thoughts, and I think they're just beautiful. So you're a great story of inspiration, and you're delightful. And so much enjoyed our time together when we were together. And if I go to New York City, I will look you up, and I guess you can consider that a warning. So, what's your intentions for tomorrow? What? Let's talk about your intentions for tomorrow.
Well, I plan to have a good day.
Okay. Will you choose to do so?
I choose to do so.
I love that words. So, uh, if there's any way that we can contact you again, we'd like to get an update. We always like to have an update on guests in usually 6 or 7 months to give us where they're at in their life. As always, at the end of every podcast, we offer a free prescription, Fatma. Fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your television and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste, my friends.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.